Let me give you now some qualities of a mentor. These are simple. There's nothing I'm going to tell you that you don't already know, but I'm going to clarify it for you. And the first quality is just got to be the first quality, and that's successful. If you go to somebody to mentor you, they should be larger than life. They should be better than you. They should be bigger than you. They should be more successful than you. Somebody says, well, how do I know when I should mentor someone? I said, first of all, are you any good at it? No one wants to follow bad. No one wants to follow average. So if you're going to find a mentor, find one that's successful. If you're going to be a mentor, be sure that you're successful. So here's a powerful statement. Who you learn from is as important as what you learn. Who you learn from is as important as what you learn. I truly believe that. You know that I come from a faith background. And my father, we teach and kind of believe that there are times when there is an empowerment when one person lays hands on another. And it's a biblical principle. And my father taught me very young. He said, son, when I told him that I was going into ministry, he said, be careful who you let lay hands on you. Because there could be a transference of something. And you just really want to have somebody that has the goods. And so in my life, in my own spiritual times and dimensions, I've had 5 times I've let people lay hands on me. All 5 times I received something distinctively incredible from that experience. And what my father was saying is, if there's going to be a transference, make sure that you got the person that's doing the transferring, having the things that you have so desperately needed in your own life. And it's the same way with mentoring. Be careful. Now let me say something. You learn from everybody. You with me? Everybody has something to teach me. If I sit down at any of your tables, and if I have an hour, every one of you in that table can teach me something that I'll take notes on that will help me. Are you with me? So everybody teach. I'm not talking about teaching. I'm talking about mentoring. Are you with me? I'm talking about a different area, okay? And this person that mentors you, you just want them to be bigger than you. Remember the growth environment thing? If you're at the head of the class, guess what? You're in the wrong class, remember? But you know who that head of the class is? That's the person you want to mentor you. And the better person that you can get to mentor you, obviously, the better it's going to be. Now, let me say that there's a huge fallacy in mentoring, and I got to declare it right now. And the fallacy is this. There are people who say, I just need one mentor in my life to help me with my life. And I'm here to tell you that won't work. There's not anybody good enough to be your only mentor. Okay? So people come to me all the time, and they'll say, would you mentor me in this area? And I start laughing. I said, no, my God, I'm not any good in that myself. So let me just explain to you. There are 6 areas in my life that I have distinct mentors for. Okay? Now, these won't be your 6, but you can write them down so it will give you an idea of what 6 yours should be. But here are my 6. Number 1 is faith. I have mentors in the area of faith. Number 2 is relationships. I have people that mentor me in people skills. Number 3 is equipping. I have people that help me learn how to better develop people. Number 4 is thinking. I have thought mentors, men and women who really have wisdom and are terrific thinkers. Number 5 is leadership. Yes, I have leadership mentors. I've got about 3 people that I go to and get leadership wisdom from. And number 6, this one's just a new one for me, health. And I'm saying, you dummy, John, why didn't you get somebody to do that years ago? But now I'm getting health mentors. Are you with me? For me. Now, you got to figure out, and it doesn't have to be 6. These are my 6. And these are all different people. None of these people are the same. In fact, most of these people don't even know the other people. You with me? So I mentor by category. And the reason I mentor these 6 things is because I think these 6 things are absolutely huge. Remember this. If you're mentoring people, let them set the agenda. When I started mentoring, before I knew better, I was always trying to get material to mentor them with. I was getting lessons to teach them. And very quickly I realized that isn't the way to mentor people. The way to mentor people is to come and let their life bubble up. And you teach them out of what they're experiencing, what they're going through. Let them ask the questions. But the first area of mentorship is the great mentors, you got to be successful. Okay. The second quality of a mentor is to be what I call an engaged listener. Now, folks, listening is an art. And it's something that I did not do well in my first 10 years, 12 years of leading. I did a lot of things well, but I was a very poor listener. And until I had an encounter with a staff member that just said, you don't listen very well. And I had to go back to the drawing board and realize that and so here's what I did. I developed the art of listening. And the more I listened, guess where the questions, when I developed the art of listening, that's when I learned to ask good questions. The book, Good Leaders Ask Great Questions, the forerunner of that was listening. And as I developed my listening skills, all of a sudden, it helped me to say, oh, I need to ask this question. And so when I say be an engaged listener, what I mean is be fully present, 100% there. Okay? Turn off your cell phone. When I would be with John Wooden, and I would be with him for 4 hours. I mean, we would almost always start with either breakfast and end at noon, or we'd start at lunch and end at about dinner time. If we were at his house, his phone would ring. He never picked up his phone. And every time, this is very interesting, every time I was at his home, which was every time we'd go, I'd be with him. Every time I was with him, he would get at least 1, sometimes 3, 4, 5 calls from his former ball players. Because I would hear them, they'd come over the system and say, Coach, this is Bill Walton. And when he didn't pick up, they'd say, I know you're with someone. Isn't that beautiful? In other words, you're not going to talk to me. I had the opportunity to be with Bill Clinton, the most incredible, charismatic listener I've ever been with. Spend 30 minutes with him, and you understand why he was elected. In fact, when we would spend time together, if he wanted to get a drink of water and I was talking, he would reach over and he wouldn't look at the where, he'd reach over and feel for the water, and he'd get it. And while he was listening to me, he would drink the water just like this. I remember one day we were in the Oval Office, and they kept coming in because they wanted to go to Camp David they wanted to do some security exercises with him at Camp David. And so they came in 3 times while we were just in the Oval Office talking. And finally, he looked at me and said, John, follow me. And we went into a side door. If you go in the Oval Office, there's a door that it fits the rounded wall, but there's a door to the right that you can go back in. And that's where a lot of times when the presidents want to be alone and get some work done, they really go back there. And he said, when we go back here, they are not allowed to come in and interrupt. And he said, I'm just tired of him interrupting us. And we went back and sat for another hour and a half that day. He was 100% there. And he had the ability to make me feel like I was the most important person in the world. By the time we were done, I thought, he's going to ask me to be vice president. When I was trying to learn my listening skills because I wasn't good at it, I would take my legal pad, and every time I got into a group meeting, I would put a big letter L 3 inches on the right-hand top of my legal pad. And that big L just reminded me, listen, John, listen. On my book on intentional living, I brought on another person that's done some writing that I liked her writing style, and I wanted her to help me a little bit with the book. Of course, Charlie helps me a lot, but I wanted to, this is kind of, intentional living is more of a memoir. You'll find when you read it, it's very personal. It's like I'm sitting down talking to you. And it's a lot about my journey to significance myself and helping people find their journey. And when I started having my sessions with Laura Morton, and she was getting my story out, she was saying, oh, come on, talk to me about your stories. There's something very interesting. When she'd start, she'd turn on a tape recorder. She'd say, now, John, I'm going to tape what you say. She would turn on the tape recorder, and then she'd ask me questions, and I'd start talking. And I remember we were up in our mountain home up in Highlands for about 3 or 4 days, and I had Charlie with me at this one. And it was the first time Charlie was with me and Laura when we were working. And Charlie, after our first break, said, John, he said, this is powerful, because here's what Charlie saw that I saw the first time. She'd turn on the tape recorder, and she would ask questions for 2 hours. And she never took her eyes off me the whole time. Not once. She never wrote a note. She never jotted anything down. She never fidgeted for her purse. She just asked questions. And so after that break, Charlie talked to her about it, and she said, I learned a long time ago, just let the tape recorder record the conversation, because she said, my job is to get everything out of him that I can get out of him. And the only way I can do that is I've just got to actively listen, ask questions, actively listen, ask questions, actively listen. And she said, if I'm taking notes, or if I'm writing things down, or if I've got my computer out, she said, I've got to keep my eyes on him, because she said, if I watch him, visually I can tell where he's going. Okay. I think if you're a great mentor, you are an engaged listener. Number 3. The third quality is that good people in mentoring practice the art of great questions. They just practice the art of great questions. Now, if you've read my book, Good Leaders Ask Great Questions, you know that I have a whole chapter on the value of questions. And I started the whole book off that because I had to set the reader up with the fact that the reason this book is on questions is because there's great return and great value in it. And I shared with you that the value of asking questions is questions are the keys that unlock doors. They unlock doors of opportunity. When you ask a question, you turn the key, and all of a sudden the door begins to open. Now, there's a group of people, executives, I call them the circle, that I mentor. And we've been doing this for a couple years, and it's a high dollar kind of a deal, and they pay major bucks to be with me for a day. And then I call them monthly, and I teach for 30 minutes, and I Q&A for an hour. And so one of the people in the circle, a businessman out of Ohio, is named Greg. And Greg was going to see Marcus Buckingham. And Marcus is a good friend of mine. And so Greg said, John, can I call you? And so he called me. He said, I'm going to see him in a couple of days. And he said, I got these list of questions. And he said, I think they're really good questions. And I'm going to interview. And he said, I just want to make sure I prepared the great questions. And I could tell he was really locked into his questions. And I surprised him. First of all, I said, I think they're great questions, Greg. But I got a concern. I said, I think you're locked into your questions. And I think you're going to miss the best questions if you're not careful, because you're so content oriented that you're not going to be an active listener. And he's going to say something to you that's going to trigger a better question than what you've got on paper. Does that make sense? So here's what I want you to know. Your job is to prepare the best questions. But then it's your job, after you start asking those questions, to be active in your listening. And the moment they say something that triggers something better than you, get out of your question patch. You follow me? and go over there and get to where they are. It goes back to what I explained. I think I explained this to you the other day. The difference between good coaches and great coaches. Good coaches have a pre-game routine, you follow me? And great coaches make their adjustments at halftime. Well, the pre-game plan is the prepared questions. The halftime adjustments are the questions you get out of conversation. One more thought on this. Answers expand people, but questions deepen people. And so, if we're mentoring, when you give answers, you expand people, but there's something about asking questions to that person you mentors that deepens them. And if you're mentoring them, you've got to ask questions because you've got to know exactly where they are. Okay. I'm ready to go to number 4. Are we learning something? Okay, then I'll go to 4, because I can stop. Number 4 is humility. It would be my hope that if you mentor with humility. And if you have a mentor, you're mentored with humility. You've heard me say that if you want to impress people, talk about your success. But if you want to impact people, talk about your failures. I believe that with all of my heart. And you've heard me talk about the success gap, the gap between the person that's successful and the other person. And when you get in that mentoring relationship, there's a big chance that there's going to be a gap. And again, you hear me talk about you don't want fans, you don't want fans, you want friends. If you want friends, you close the gap. If you want fans, you increase the gap, okay? And the first thing that you want to do is remove that gap. Now, here's what humility does. Humility creates an environment for learning and empowerment. When you teach and mentor and share with humility, with vulnerability, with openness, not as Mr. Answer Man, all of a sudden, you create and prepare soil to really be receptive to the seed that you sow. I'm going to give you examples. I do quite a work with direct marketing companies. And when I mentor the leaders of direct marketing companies, I tell them that one of their major problems, they've got quite a few. They also have quite a few blessings, so they think direct marketing is fabulous. But one of the major direct marketing problems is that all they talk about is success. They parade people across the stage that are successful. And they just talk about, put it on the refrigerator. And all they talk about is how good they are and what they've done. And it's just success, success, success. And I tell them all the time that they talk too much about success and they don't talk enough about failure. So here's what happens. If all the time I'm talking to you and I'm talking to you about how good I am and how much I've made and what I've done and who I am, and it's just success, and then you go out and you're in the company and you try it, well, the first thing you know, you're never good the first time. Are you with me? So if all you've heard is success and you're going out there and what are you getting? Failure. It doesn't take long to say, I'm not cut out for this. And so people leave direct marketing by the thousands. And they leave, not because they couldn't do it, they leave because they've got this, all they've heard is this success, and they look at theirs, and theirs isn't that good, and they're sitting there and they say, I'm never going to make it. And I tell the direct marketing people, when people leave, they don't call you and tell you. They just disappear. And you say, where'd Joe go? Boy, Joe's not been to our meetings for a month. Well, Joe quit coming because all you did is talk about how good you are, and Joe's found out he isn't that good. When I pastored in San Diego, every Wednesday night, we would engage, 300 people. We had trained them and equipped them to go out and share their faith. So we'd have a dinner before we go share our faith. And so 300 people would come, and we'd have a dinner, and we'd just enjoy ourselves. And 15 minutes before we're to go out, I would have a few people talk about last week's experiences. Now listen to this carefully. And I made sure that I would have 3 failure stories for every 1 success story. So I'd get a person up and they say, yeah, last week I went to share my faith and I got this address and I got to the end of the road on it. It was the right street and there was a canyon and then all of a sudden I realized I had to turn around and go to the other canyon. This is before you had all the GPS stuff. And it took me 45 minutes to get to a place I thought it would only take me 5 minutes. And by the time I got there, it was too late and the people were going to bed. And so I lost that when I said, yeah, wow, great try. Somebody say, yeah, I went up to the door and the dog came around the corner and bit me and I had to go to the veterinarian and get a tetanus shot. And oh, that's great. Wow. And then I look at people and say, hey, guess what? How many of you else think you could get bit in the butt by a dog? Huh? Isn't that amazing? How many else have you could get lost tonight? Do you see what I'm doing? What I'm doing is when they go out and they have a bad night, they don't think they're bad. They say, oh, just that happened to Joe last week. You see, misery loves company. People don't care if they're really bad as long as everybody else is bad. Hello? But when everybody else is good and you're bad, you're gone. And that's why when I teach, when I write, when I do all this stuff, I work real hard on putting it in a level playing field and making you know that I wasn't that good when I was your age and I didn't do it right when I was that. And I make sure I know that because what's that do? Can I tell you something? When somebody that is successful talks about their failures, that's very empowering, isn't it? Because you walk away and say, man, they did some stupid things and look where they are. Humility is a very important quality of a mentor and a leader. And somebody asked me the other day, so, well, how do I get humility? I said, well, that's very easy. Get realistic. You're real stupid. You just happen to have clothes on, but you're stupid. We're all stupid. And, how do I get humility? Have a reality day check. Go talk to people who know you and let them say, talk to me about my faults. Take notes. We've all got it. Let me give you a picture of the person that you should mentor before I bring Mark up, okay? The person that you should mentor, number one, should be hungry. They should just be hungry. You don't want to mentor a person that's not sure why they're there. When I had no money and I wanted to build a church, I got the list of the top 10 pastors of the largest churches in America, and I called them all on the phone and tried to get appointments with them, and I offered $100 for 30 minutes. And I offered $100 for 30 minutes when I was making $4,800 a year. Do the math. If all 10 of them would have said yes, 20% of my income would have been spent on mentoring. That's why I have no patience with people who are unwilling to pay a price to get better. I have no desire to sponsor anybody, including you. Everything I have, I paid a price for. And when you pay a price for it, you never forget how precious it is. But when it's given to you, you can forget real quickly. I did that $100 to show those 10 pastors I was hungry. 30 minutes for $100. I love people all the time. They come, they hear that story. I'll give you $100 for 30 minutes. I said, that was in 1972. Napoleon Hill said, the starting point of every great achievement is desire. He was exactly right. The starting point of every great achievement is desire. And I run into people all the time. I think I told you one time about the kid who came up to me. I'd been speaking that day to a couple thousand people that I think they'd all paid $1,000 to hear me or something like that. It was a pretty good day. And he came up to me in the afternoon break and said, I've been watching this and watching you teach and everybody's enjoying it. He said, I'd like to do what you do. And I smiled. I said, I'm sure you'd like to do what I do. I said, I got a question for you. Would you like to do what I did? so you can do what I do. See, we don't get to do what people do that we admire until we do what they did. The doing what they did allows you to do what they do. And you got to do the did before the do. And if you don't get the did before the do, you don't. But if you put the did before the do, you might. Don't ask me to repeat that. Honest to God, that's not in my notes. I have no clue. I'm in deep weeds already, okay? I've never said that before, so I'm just sitting there laughing at myself while I teach. When I teach, you understand why I'm teaching. All these thoughts are all over my mind. You understand? I mean, I talk to myself the whole time. I teach you, I talk to myself. I talk myself out of saying things. Some things I say it and should have talked myself out of it, but I let it out anyway. What we accomplish in life is not based on what we want, but on how much we want it. So when people say, well, I'd like to have that, the question is not, do you want to have that? The question is, how much do you want it? Kipling said, if you don't get what you want, it's a sign either that you did not seriously want it or you tried to bargain over the price. That's powerful. I know all kinds of people. They're never going to get what they want because they're still trying to bargain over the price. Remember this. If you make a good investment in yourself, whatever you paid wasn't enough because the return will always be greater. The second thing I look for when I mentor a person is capacity. I look at that person and I ask myself, what kind of capacity do they have? Because obviously, the better person that you mentor as far as capacity, the greater return that you're going to have. Now, hang with me. We judge ourselves by our potential and by our intentions. I like that even better. We judge ourselves by our intentions. Isn't that right? Well, I meant to do that. Well, oh, yes. Oh, yeah, I was going to do that. We judge ourselves by our intentions, but others judge us by our performance. They don't judge us by our intentions. They judge you, what, did you do it or did you not do it? And mentors try to close the gap between intentions and performance. They say, okay, I've got to take this person and I've got to close this gap between their potential and their performance. Now, right now I'm writing a book on capacity. It's just starting, so it's not major yet, but I'm forming it. And so far, I've come up with 8 capacity categories. Because when you ask yourself, what's the capacity of a person? So many times we don't understand that there are different silos, different categories of which to look at a person's capacity. So I'll give them to you. Number 1 is mental. How much mind strength do they have? Number 2 is emotional. How much stress can they handle? Number 3 is energy. Do they wear out after 3 hours? How many naps do they need in a day? Number 4 is relational. What kind of capacity do they have to connect with people? Number 5 is leadership. Can they influence? Number 6 is creativity. Do they have the ability to take what they have and make it better? Number 7 is teamwork. Do they have the capacity and the willingness to work with others? Because if you can work with others, you can get more accomplished. And number 8 is equipping. Do they have the capacity to develop and equip other people? So when you're mentoring somebody, try to gauge what those capacities are in those areas. Number 3 is influence. When I am mentoring somebody, I want to know what kind of influence they have. Can I tell you something? If you mentor somebody and they influence nobody, you got a dead-end street. You understand that? You're gumming yourself to death to one person who will never pass it on. So you got to ask yourself, do they have influence? And how many people they influence? How do they influence? Those are great questions. Number 4 is reproduction. Do they reproduce? Do they reproduce? Let me talk to you just for 2 minutes, Mark. I'm about ready to bring you up, buddy. About expectations. If I were to mentor you on the front end before I ever mentored you, I would share with you my expectations of this relationship. If you have expectations on the front end, it reduces disappointment on the back end. And what happens is too many people, they don't start off with expectations. And so because there's not a set of expectations on the front end, they go halfway through it, and then all of a sudden they find out this isn't going the way I thought it was going to go. So if I was going to mentor you, I would share it with you. Now, let me explain something to you. I'm mentoring you so that you pass it on to others. So before I pour my life into you, I've got a question to ask you. Who are you going to pour your life into? In fact, I have had the person bring the person that they were going to mentor to see me before I mentor them. Because I wanted to make sure that this wasn't going to somebody that couldn't carry it on. And I would tell them, I'm mentoring them, and when I'm done, they're going to go mentor you. When I resigned my church at Skyline, I had 700 trained leaders. I had 2,000 people that did weekly ministry in the church. In fact, when I resigned, I told them, be slow in getting another pastor because you do all the work. In fact, the first Sunday I went to Skyline, I looked at him, I said, I've got the greatest job in the world. You pay me to get you to work. And I passed out spiritual gift tests. And I said, I'm going to find your spiritual gift, and then we're going to give you the ministries that match your spiritual gift, and we're going to all assign you a job. And that's exactly what we did. And so they did all the work. They did all the ministry. The ministers were the people, not me. I was the equipper. And so when I resigned, I said, be careful. You don't get a pastor, because pastors can mess your church up. You know, they can get up there and they're going to have to think that they should do all the teaching and the leading and just mess it up. I said, just, you know, why don't you wait a year? Just get pulpit supply people. And sure enough, a couple months after I left, had about 4 or 5 of my board member friends said they want to take me out to lunch. And they said, John, remember you told us about don't get a pastor. And hey, we just want you to know, ever since you've left, the church, ever since you left, the church is going greater than ever before. I mean, they were so excited. They said, membership is up, the offerings are up, baptisms are up, everything's, I mean, in fact, they said, if we realized it was this good, you could have left a couple years ago. Oh, that's beautiful. That's so beautiful. That's exactly what you want in life. You want to be replaceable. When somebody says, well, that's an irreplaceable person, I always smile and say, oh my God, another egomaniac. We're all replaceable, folks. If I die today, God won't be discouraged. And he won't say, let's just hold everything down there until we find somebody to replace John. He doesn't need me, he doesn't need you. And so I, a long time ago, bought into this idea that the best leaders are the leaders who equip and train their people to lead. And then they go alongside of them and just applaud the effort. Now, Mark Cole, listen to me carefully, Mark Cole handles everything for me. Well, he doesn't. Linda Eggers handles all my daily stuff. Mark handles all my business, and you can tell that I've got a great life. I do absolutely nothing. But I have had a lot of CEOs, and I've had a lot of second men, people. Mark Cole, hands down, is the best second man CEO that I have ever had in my life. This guy,
Thank you. A week ago, John called me on the phone. A lot of times he doesn't give me an advance notice that he wants me to say something. And so I was kind of pumped, but he gave me a week. And when you're sharing the stage with John, I went, man, you either got to come up with 3 P's, 3 C's, or something that rhymes. And I thought, man, I got a week to figure this thing out. And so I've got this canned thing that I want to talk to you about. But then this afternoon, John spent 1 hour and 15 minutes, 75 minutes with me, mentoring me personally on some challenges in my leadership that I'm having. Some challenges. And I mean, it wasn't about you guys. It wasn't about companies. It was about me and what I'm going through. And I thought, hey, I went on a run. It was a heavy meeting for me. John felt pretty good, but he took 75 minutes to let me know some things. And I just left the room heavy, and I went on a run because that's kind of my outlet. And on the run, I thought, you know what? I could do one of 2 things this afternoon for 12, 13 minutes. I could give you the canned speech that I've been working on for 1 solid week, or I could let you get a glimpse behind the curtain of John mentoring me this afternoon. So I'm just going to ask you, would you prefer canned, or do you want to see the curtain? Curtain? So let's do the curtain.
Let's do the curtain.
18 months ago, John made a personnel transition that for me was the hardest one I'd ever seen. It was a transition for somebody that was very important to John. It was an incredible leader. It was a dynamic leader. It was a personal friend of mine. And it was a transition that there was no doubt in my mind needed to be made. But the difficulty of the transition and watching John handle that changed my life forever. In fact, 30 minutes ago, before we went into that, we're sitting in a hotel room. I still remember it to this day. And John said, Mark, let me help you with something. It was an incredible day in my life when, as a leader, I understood I wanted to lead more than I wanted to be loved. Now, he was talking to Mr. Relationship. I know how to lead people. I'm pretty good at it. In fact, the #1 song on my iPhone playlist is Kumbaya. Number 5, number 7, number 10. This Kumbaya, I love that song. I'm just Mr. Relationship. Let's sit by the campfire and let everybody else make the hard decision. It's really easy for me, relationship. But over the last 4 years, because of you guys, our companies are soaring. And so I'm finding myself having to lead organizations, lead leaders of organizations. And you don't always do that relationally. And so I watched John make this very difficult decision after he had just rocked my world with this thought. I wanted to lead. One day in my career, I figured out as a relational leader, it was more important to lead than it was to be loved. And so for 18 months, John, you have spent this time with me. And so if you don't mind, since they chose the curtain, I want to give about 6 or 7 things that I learned today. And I want to see if you feel like you got an ROI on your investment in me today.
Oh, I love this.
So I'm going to share it. I'm going to talk to them, but it's all what you helped me with today. And when I'm done, I'm going to ask you the question in front of these people, do you feel like it was a good investment of your 75 minutes?
You better be good.
Because you've been mentoring me. No pressure.
I'm going to take notes here.
No pressure. You see, because again, I feel like at this stage in my life, that if I'm going to lead organizations, it's a little different than leading people, but I don't want to trade what's been so special to me. And I find myself in this dichotomy of wanting to be a relational leader, but needing to be a bottom line leader so that we can transform the countries that we all want to transform, and we can grow the world through JMT DNA. And so as John has been working with me on that, and today specifically worked with me on that, I told John that day, you'll remember this, I said, John Maxwell, you will never make a leadership transition again in your life. You'll never have to do it. From this day forward, forevermore, it'll be my responsibility, no matter the situation, that you will never have to make a transition again. You won't have to make a hire, you won't have to make a fire, you won't have to readjust people. That's my job. Because this guy's too busy to be flying to this city way back in Podunk, USA to make this staffing transition. And I made a commitment to him that day, you'll never have to do that again. And I took that serious. So for the last 18 months, John has been working with me on that. So today I'm sitting with him, I'm working through some things in one of our, in multiple of our companies. And I sit down with John and said, John, you've got to help me. I need to understand what I can be doing better. I know how to be bottom line, but sometimes I'm bottom line so much that I lose my identity in being relationship. So how do I do that? And John showed me 6 things in this session today that I want to share with you. Now, some of this is redundant, but I'm not being redundant because you asked for the curtain and some of it's repetitive. So it's your fault if you put the same thing in your notes because you chose. I could talk to you about interrogate, activate, and appreciate, which was my can deal, but you guys didn't want that. You didn't think it was going to be that good. I'm all right. I'm all right.
We can hardly wait, baby. We can hardly wait.
The first thing John showed me today was the difference between construction and deduction. Many times when we take on a mentorship relationship, when we want to mentor somebody, we feel like that we constantly need to be adding to somebody. But really the truth is that sometimes in a mentoring relationship, we need to be taking away the distractions so that we can get specific and targeted in what we need to do. And so as John was deconstructing some things in my life and deducing some things that were paramount in my life, I realized the role of a mentor really needs to know when you are constructive and when you are deconstructing what a leader really thinks that he needs. Are you adding or are you subtracting? All of them are good. But there's sometimes as a mentoree, we need to be subtracted or we need to see things taken away that are making us lose focus. The second thing that I learned from John today, 75 minutes, I learned the value of a mentor is not always in instruction, but in reflection.
Yeah.
And as a mentor, you've mentored people, I'm sure. I'm talking to the cream of the crop. I mean, you guys are there. As mentors, a lot of time we walk in thinking we're the teacher rather than the facilitator. We prepare as mentor of all these things we want to invest in these people when really all they need to do is do some self-discovering of what's already in them. And I watched John today masterfully help me arrive at something that I already knew the answer of. He just needed to allow me to arrive that answer rather than teaching me for 45 minutes. And as a mentor to me today, you sit there and you went, I'm not going to teach you anything. I'm just going to ask you some questions. Which leads me to the third thing that I learned today, that I experienced today, and you guys have already written it down, but you need to ask more questions as a mentor and give less answers. Sometimes people are not getting you to mentor them or asking you to mentor them because of the wealth of knowledge you bring to the table or the vast experience that you have. They really need somebody they trust to let them process the answer that's already in them. And as John's already taught you, asking questions will do that much quicker than giving answers. Number 4 of what John showed me today is the role of a mentor many times is more about challenging than celebrating. Mm-hmm. We need to challenge. We need to be challenged. I love John. I don't know what John took yesterday before his speech, y'all, but I want some of it. I didn't know second place was so bad. I lived my life. Yesterday I reflected that all my trophies have to be thrown out. All my trophy case of second place trophies are no good, I found out yesterday.
Amen.
And
you're doing good. I'm going to grade you high if you keep rolling on this line.
It's this concept.
I'll give you a trophy.
It's this concept that as the role of a mentor, you're not always trying to celebrate people and pump them up. Sometimes you need to settle them down and let them go on a 4-mile run. That's how much I ran today, y'all. A 4-mile run to let them do a little reflecting rather than feeling like the man like he made me feel as I walked up on the stage today. Know the role. Number 5, and I'm close. Understand the value of production versus pace. You know, again, most everybody in here is type A leader. You're an entrepreneur. You're ready to make a difference. You want to go build your company. You want to quit working for the man. You want to do something. And there's this production mindset that we all get. And I promise you guys this. John gave me something today that I need to be working on 6 months from now. And I knew as soon as he gave it that he was right on. And he saw my wheels turning. And he went, now, wait. What we just talked about is not for now. Don't go apply that right now. And to be honest with you, John, that's what I walked out heavy about.
Yeah.
That's why I had to go take a run, because I went, man, I got to do something about this. I got to fix this today. And John, sit there, guys. This is an powerful point right here. I promise you. The role of a mentor is not to always look for results, but it is sometimes to pace the mentor on when their life and when their leadership journey can handle the results. And today, with this high-powered, give me something else to do. I need to work another hour in the day. Give me something to work on, John. He saw my wheels turning. He went, whoa, wait just a minute. What we just talked about is not for now. It's for later. He understood that while I need to produce or have results in what he just shared with me, today's not the day for that result. That point right there truly blew me away, and that's probably what's going to make you give me a good grade in just a minute. Number 6, what I discovered today was John, as the mentor in my life, was not trying to reproduce himself. He was trying to help me produce my best self. He sit there and he worked with me, and he didn't say, this is how I would do it. This is what I would have done. This is what I did in my journey. He went, what do you think is going to be best for you to handle that? I don't need another, this is what John was saying in his mentor session. I don't need another John Maxwell. We got one of them. I need you to be the best version of yourself. And as I sit there and I ran this afternoon, and I realized, wow, I don't have this expectation by John in that environment, that 75 minutes. I don't have the expectation that says, you need to do it just like John. I had the expectation that, Mark, you need to handle this the best way you know how. And as mentors, I think that's an incredible point for us to understand. We're trying to be the best version of ourselves rather than trying to be like John or Paul or the faculty. These guys are trying to mentor you. You're trying to mentor others to self-discover what's the best version of themselves. Now, I'm going to ask you a question because I'm almost done. Did I give you an ROI on your 75 minutes today?
Mark, you've been kissing up through this whole speech. And I want to tell you something. You gave me a huge ROI, but let me tell you something. The reason you're the second man is all I have to do is tell you once. Listen to me carefully. If somebody's coming to you and you're hearing the same message, you're either not teachable or you're stupid and unwilling. And don't let people come to you and keep telling you the same thing. Now, if you don't understand what you're missing, if you're unaware, say, okay, you got to enlighten me more. I don't understand it yet. I don't get it yet. I don't get it yet. But Mark, every time I sit down and mentor you and pass these things off to you, you do more than take runs. You apply what I teach. And what I said earlier, remember, what's the reward of a mentor? The people are growing. And I'm thrilled you gave us behind it. You gave me, in fact, the ROI is so great. As soon as we're done, I'd like to mentor you some more and get a higher return out of it. I think you did a great job, don't you? Thanks, buddy.